Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. Happy New Year's, guys. This is going to be a great episode with my brother Matthew. We've been friends for a long time, and he's somebody I'm proud to have in my inner circle. If so, make sure you guys subscribe, hit that notification bell, because you're going to want to listen to this episode and then share this out to your brothers and sisters, because we're going to be talking about some amazing things: post-traumatic stress versus post-traumatic growth. So we're going to be talking a lot of great stuff. Helicopters, NASCAR, you name it, we're going to be talking about it all. My brother, he's been Marine Corps for 14 years. He's a coach, a trainer, speaker. He's the Swiss Army knife of positive mental health. Matthew, my brother, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, brother. Thanks for having me. I'm always excited when I get a chance to talk to you.
So how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. 2023, positive vibes for 2023, getting ready to go forward and do great things this year. See if we can help out a lot of people.
All right. So now my first question, I don't have any scripted questions, but the only question I do make sure I ask is, what is your definition of resiliency?
Oh gosh, resiliency. I think that we have to find a way to be strong inside. We have to find a way to believe in ourselves and really, through our stories, through our things that we've gone through, learned through them, but also find a way to take those inner things that we've gone through and help others, because we're not walking in this journey alone. So I think, the inner strength is what we have to be able to get our fellow veterans and our people back to.
Okay. Now, one thing that I love that you talk about, we're going to be taking a deep dive into, is how to make the right decisions. Because a lot of times, I think indecision kills, but I think making the right decision is better than making the wrong decision. So, but first of all, give us a quick down and dirty about who you are, where'd you come from, a little bit about your military service. So just give us a quick down and dirty.
Absolutely. So I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, is where I was born and raised. We ended up going to University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where I played baseball there. Great time. That's where I met my wife. I've been with her, married 27 years, and we met in college, our sophomore year of college, and we did the Marine Corps together. So I was on a guaranteed flight school contract, PLC program, left out of college and went down to flight school after the basic school, and ended up becoming a helicopter pilot for the Marine Corps. So flew CH-46 Echoes in my first squadron, HMM 365 at New River, and left there, went down and became a flight school instructor. There's a lot that goes on with being in the squadron, I'm sure we'll get into. And then left there and the flight school and came back up and was flying the V-22. Unfortunately, like I said, I played baseball in college. My knees were shot. I had some other issues, and I ended up having a series of 7 surgeries on my knees, and they ended up saying, yeah, you can no longer be a part of this. So I went through the medical retirement process at 14 years and got out, and I stayed on with the V-22 Osprey program, taught there. Eventually that came to an end. I became an air medical pilot, which is something I'm extremely proud of. Worked as a first responder with, our great paramedics, great flight nurses, trauma units, and did 659 patient flights with that. Saw people's lives change on a dime. And then after that, so in the right place at the right time. And I became Team Penske NASCAR and Indy's helicopter pilot for Roger Penske. And then obviously COVID hit. There's really no flying in and out of races. So at that time, I transitioned into flying a Gulfstream 280 for Roger Penske. So I fly Gulfstream 280. I still fly the helicopter in and out of races, and just support Penske in every way I can. And then I say all that to say that's my side gig. My real gig is I have a platform called Convene Communities, and I'm also a counselor, Christian counselor. We just talked about it from Liberty University. We stole your coach from Coastal, and I apologize about that, but I'm happy for Liberty. So there you go. That's me in a nutshell.
All right, guys, we got to go. It's been a great show. Talk to you. Let's hop in the Wayback Machine, because, like I said, it seems like it's a helicopter. Last couple of weeks, I just had Lieutenant Colonel Slade on, and Lieutenant Colonel Mann's coming on today. But was it something that you always wanted to do?
Oh, gosh.
What got you into helicopters?
Yeah, I had dreamed about being a pilot. That was it. I grew up, think about mid '80s and all that. I just wanted to be a pilot. You had Top Gun. Let's be honest. Everybody's watching that movie. It was just something that I'd always dreamed about. I'd always wanted to be in the military as well. And so that was the goal that I set off on. I'd be lying to you if I told you, I think the majority of people that go in the Marine Corps into naval aviation go in thinking that they want to fly a jet. They had what was called a fleet fly-in, where they came down to Southfield at New River, and I went down there and got to see and get a ride in a helicopter. Got to see the helicopters, and to me, it was just the feels, the people that I was talking to. I'm a people person, and I just felt like that's where my personality belonged, was in that helicopter world. I also remember when I was in the basic school one time, we had a mission, and I went in the back of the CH-46. And I remember, it was all night vision goggle ready. And I'm looking up front and I see these two guys up there with their night vision goggles, see the crew chiefs in the back with their night vision goggles. And I just thought it was, and, we're up and we're in a zone, simulating an attack. A couple of minutes later, I'm like, this is it, so it just fit me. And so I transitioned from thinking I needed to fly jets over to being a helicopter pilot and flying at, 50 feet and below, doing our thing. So.
Now, did you got deployed? Were you in Bosnia?
Yeah. So first deployment, Operation Allied Force, Kosovo. So if everybody remembers back when that was going on, we had just come in theater over there in the Mediterranean, and you had Serbia and Kosovo going at it in that time frame, and we were the Southern Hat trap force, meaning that if somebody got shot down, we were going to be the ones that went and got them in the southern half of the operating area. And nobody ever got shot down in that area during the time. Scott O'Grady got shot down in a different place. That was in the northern sector time frame. And so the peace treaty got signed. And of course, we're first in. We take off and we go up into Kosovo. Many people might, listen to your call, might have been in Kosovo. Camp Bondsteel. If you've ever heard of Camp Bondsteel, it's a big complex now, or it was at the time. It wasn't at the time. I was the first helicopter to land. So I was one of the first 4 people to lay feet on Camp Bondsteel when it was just a hill, So, yeah. So we operated out of there many months, and then Army came in and took over, and we pulled out and went back home. So,
now, were you involved in Operation Iraqi Freedom at all?
So no, none of Iraqi Freedom. Operation Enduring Freedom heavily. So Operation Enduring Freedom. I was set to deploy. We were going to deploy on September 19th. I was actually in a little music class when I was on leave with my little 1-year-old daughter when the towers got hit. And by the time I got home, we were called in to leave. And the next day, so packed my bags. We were ready to leave. We didn't leave for the next 2 days. Kind of interesting at the time. My wife was like, on the 3rd day, was like, hey, if you don't leave tomorrow, don't come home, go stay in the BOQ, because I was telling my son bye every morning. And then I was coming home in the afternoon, and they couldn't understand it. So on the 3rd day, we ended up leaving. The reason why we didn't leave earlier is we were going to go up to New York City and fly bodies out of the World Trade Center. But there was no bodies to fly out. So we left and steamed on to the east and did a rehearsal exercise in Egypt. When that exercise was finishing up, I got flown off with 2 other guys and went to Bahrain and was locked in a room there with General Mad Dog Mattis and planned the insertion, the airfield seizure of Camp Rhino, and planned the airfield seizure of Kandahar. And so we executed that in November 2001, and then we operated out of there. So I ended up leading a lot of the initial missions with Marines and other types, special forces, and from our country, other countries, and stuff like that. So I operated out there, and I did that for a long time. So it was good.
Okay, so now you did a total of 14 years.
Yeah.
I got medically discharged. I didn't go out the way I wanted to go out.
No.
I wanted to do 30, but if you lose your vision and you can't see, we don't need you. You can't shoot, so we don't need you.
Yeah.
And that's when it was my lowest point, because I got thrown out of the military the first time for being a drug addict, got back in, and then I did everything I could to make up for my past, and did everything I could to become the ultimate soldier. And now they're telling me well, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufman.
Yeah.
Well, who am I? Who is Richard if he's not Sergeant Kaufman? And that's when I had a big downward spiral.
Yeah.
So now you're at 14 years. Um, your knees are all jacked up. Were you planning on getting out ahead of time? Did you start?
Absolutely not. No, I had just put in my package and picture and everything for the Lieutenant Colonel's board. It had already been submitted, and right after that comes the command board. My goal was to command a V-22 squadron, one of the first ones on the West Coast, which I think that would have happened. Pretty sure it would have. And no, I was going to make it 20. I had no intentions of getting out. And I walked in over there. I had to get my waiver redone because I had had these surgeries a couple of years prior, but I still had metal in my knees from where they had done the surgeries. And I went back in, went into the orthopedic, and you can't make this up. The whole appointment was 2 minutes. It's about 2 minutes. The doctor walked in and he looked at me and he said, you had bilateral high tibia osteotomies on your knees. Is that correct? And I was like, yes. And he said, well, you can't have those surgeries and stay in the Marine Corps. I'm denying this waiver. I didn't get any questions. I didn't. And he goes, so now you're going to be processed out. And he turned and walked out, Richard. He turned and walked out. That was my my thing. Now, we'll get into this a little bit later, but there's more to that story, as far as me personal, the things that I was going through based off of, the mishap that I had, witnessed and losing one of my good friends. At the time, it was almost like a relief to me because I was suffering more than I thought I was at the time from the loss of some of my friends and everything like that.
Well, since we're there already,
yeah.
Why don't we go back a little bit and talk to us about that day?
Yeah. So the day that really changed my life and still drives my life, so I would say changed it and drives it each and every day, was July 9th of 2001. And we were in workups. We were getting ready to deploy in September, and we were doing some practice shipboard landings at the LHA deck. That was the mission for the night. And so I went down into maintenance control to get the book for the aircraft and sign for it. And I saw my combat crew chief. Now, let me explain who my combat crew chief was. The day I checked into my squadron as Lieutenant Currin, this sergeant got out of our corporal got out of his car, saluted me. I saluted him back. We walked in. I went to the XO. He went to the sergeant major. When we walked out that day, we were assigned to each other. So he was my combat crew chief. So we really grew up together inside of this squadron. He was always with me. Operation Allied Force. When I went through weapons tactics instructor school in Motts 1 in Yuma, Arizona, that's basically like Marine Corps Top Gun. When I was there as a student, he was there as a student as well. My partner. We were partnered. And then, so I did the majority of my flights I did with him. So when I walked into maintenance control that day and I said, hey, bro, let me see the book. I was like, let me sign for the book. And he goes, hey, we're not flying together. And I was like, well, what do you mean we're not flying together? Because it was on the schedule when I had looked at it that we were flying together. And he said, well, I'm going to let this new guy, Sergeant Salah, fly with you tonight. He had just gotten to the squadron from squadron in Okinawa. He said, but we're together tomorrow night. He says, I'll see you tomorrow, or see you after the flight. I'm like, okay, good to go. It wasn't that, unusual for crew swaps and things like that to happen. So long story short, we go down single ship. I take off. The other one takes off behind us a little bit late, a few minutes later, and we're down there and we're doing practice shipboard landing. So the mission was practice landing on the ship at night using night vision goggles. We had some new guys that we were training. So we had an aircraft issue in our helicopter. We were sitting at the front of the LHA deck talking about it. So everybody's head was kind of inside because it was a maintenance issue. It wasn't that big of a deal, but there was some teaching going on, talking about how to fly with what's called the power management system turned off. And so I asked the gunny, I said, Gunny, where are they at? He said, hey, sir, they're on downwind. Okay, good to go. No problem. We continue talking. I remember seeing this flash of light in my eye, but in my goggles, but I was seeing lightning strikes anyway because some weather had moved through and delayed us. So that wasn't that big of a deal. And so I see this flash, and then I say, "Hey, Gunny, can I lift?" And he goes, "Sir, what did they call departing?" And Sergeant Salah, the new guy in the helicopter, was like, "What do you mean, Gunny? Aircraft just don't disappear." He stuck his head out of the helicopter. He said, "Sir, come up now. They're in the water." So we lifted up, kicked the tail around, and man, it was like the best way I could describe it, Richard, is like what you see on TV after an airplane or something crashes and there's this debris field. And that's what it was. We lifted up and you could just see debris all in the water, but you could see the helicopter sticking kind of up out of the water because it was shallow. The New River was shallow at that point. So we came over and we rescued. Yeah, we didn't rescue. We saw one helmet pop up. We saw another one pop up. So we knew we had two survivors or two people. That was five in the helicopter.
Now
And
this is nighttime, right? This
yeah,
is
it's nighttime. Yeah, it's the middle of the night. So we're on night vision goggles, so we can see their white helmet, and see their white helmet in the water. So we ended up coming around and dropping a raft to them, and these two Marines were standing there holding it. We didn't know who it was, but they're not getting in the raft, but you could tell they're standing, and the water's kind of shallow. And so we end up coming around, and we land on the LHA deck, send the gunny down. He goes in the water, and to see if he can help get them out. We're waiting on first responders to getting there. We've called Pedro, which is the Cherry Point helicopter, and they're on the way. And so they finally show up. Pedro shows up, and literally the diver goes down. He goes around. We can see him go around the helicopter, like crawl around it, and he goes right back up. I mean, he was down 2-3 minutes. And he goes back up and he flies over, and we're on the LHA deck, and he basically faces us. And then my crew chief is out, and the diver gets out, and you can see them talking. And some of the hardest words I've ever heard in my life were, "Sir, take me home. They're all dead. I want to go home." And so that's what my crew chief said to me. And so he climbs back in the helicopter. There's first responders on the scene now. We know that we have the the two survivors of the two pilots. So we know now that we lost 3 crew chiefs in the back. And that was crushing. It was crushing because Clark Beatty was in the back of that. And that's the other 2 are just as important. And it was hard. It was just so hard because then we had to pick up and fly home. And we had to fly back up the New River. And I remember, and there's, I did a video recently about it, and the guy did a great job capturing this like a documentary, but it was silent. Although we're in a loud helicopter, it was silent. And looking out at the water was calm. But it was like nobody was saying a word, and you could just, it was almost like you could hear a pin drop in the helicopter. We get back. This is what a lot of people don't think about, Richard, is that when we get back, the mishap is ongoing, right? So now we're in the investigation. So we get out of the helicopter. Each of us has an escort standing right there with us, and we go inside of the hangar, and they say you can make one phone call. So I call my wife. Well, this is 2001. It's not like you have a cell phone hanging around. You're going to call her on the landline. Well, now it's midnight. Well, I have 2 young kids at home, so I never used to call because I want to, we lived in base housing. I didn't want to wake my kids up from sleeping. So I would just go home, normally without calling, but she answers the phone. She's like, "Why are you calling me?" And I remember the way she said, "Why are you calling me?" And she said, I said, "Well, I'm going to be here tonight." And she said right away, she said, "Did somebody die?" And she knew from my voice. And I was like, "Yeah." And, but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't tell her what happened. I couldn't say anything. And, I just said, "I'll be home in the morning." And man, it was brutal. Stayed there all night. I remember going home, getting a quick shower, climbing into the bed and just crying, because we had just lost 3 amazing Marines and lost Clark Beatty. The next couple of days were a little bit tough, obviously, because there's a picture where they're pulling the helicopter out of the water. Myself, Sergeant Salah, and Gunny Collins were sitting there watching them do this. We were sitting on the LHA deck watching, all of us, just tears coming down our face. I had just found out that another squadron, and this is what drives me today. This is what drives my life, Richard, is I just found out that another squadron had had a mishap a year and a half prior that was the same causal factor that caused our mishap. Now, in their mishap, nobody died. It was just coming into a landing zone, having a hard landing. They pranged up the helicopter a little bit, but you know what? They kept it a secret in their squadron. It was a 6 cents fix. You could go out to the helicopter, unscrew one bolt, and screw another one in. And what ended up happening in the helicopter is they turned the red cockpit dome lights on. At the time, we were not fully NVG compatible. We were making that transition. So at the time, the early generation goggles, if you introduce red light, it would bloom them out, you know? Well, that's what happened. They turned on the red cockpit dome light. They were coming in. They were probably less than 300 feet, coming down and around to land. And it's classic decision making. So you ask me why I speak and teach and talk about decision making. It's because everybody focused on turning off that light. Nobody flew the helicopter. And so all they had to do is level the wings, center the ball, pull power, climb away from the ground. But that's not how it works sometimes, right? When we get tunnel vision, when we get so focused on something, especially in high risk environments, is that, you know, we can get channelized. And that's what they did. And the guy who was flying the helicopter lowered the collective. He reached up to turn it off because it was right over his shoulder. And he flew the helicopter right into the ground. Did he mean to do it? Absolutely not. Nobody sets out to crash a helicopter and all that. But the problem is there was a big chain of events that went back a year and a half prior that could have avoided that mishap. So,
and you know, something like I got hooked on this show called Air Disasters. I don't know why, but I've watched every episode. I think 15 seasons in. I think I'm able to fly a helicopter.
Yeah, you probably are.
But it seems like whenever there's an accident, there's a chain of things that happen.
Absolutely.
It's not just, you know, one thing. It seems like there's always one thing after another, after another, after another, where if just one thing would have been different, the outcome would have been totally different.
You're 100% right. If one thing would have been different, that mishap would have never happened. And it goes back to changing the bolt, changing it to a dual toggle switch, because it would have been impossible if it was a dual toggle switch first and foremost to turn that light on. You could beat it. You could do whatever you wanted unless you pulled it, put it in the on position, and pulled it and put it in the off position. That switch wasn't moving. And that didn't happen. That wasn't there. So it's you know, it's one of those things that drives me, because for the longest time I just worked as a, you know, high risk environment speaker, working at hospitals, power industry, nuclear industry. But people would come up and talk to me and they would say, "Hey, can I talk to you about my marriage? Can I talk to you about my family? Can I talk to you about, you know, parenting?" Because a lot of the things that go on in real everyday life, still there's a chain of events that always leads to these things. And so if we work together, we focus on life and different things that can happen in decision making, and no matter what realm we're in, you know, we can make a difference and not have things go wrong. And that's the ultimate goal.
All right. So now, before we get, because I want to dig deeper, I want to dig deep into standard operation procedures, because I think most of the time, not all the times, but most of the time, it's because we missed a step during those SOPs, or we never even put it into the SOP until the shit hits the fan, and then there's a reason why you're putting in an SOP. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. Guys, as you know, I was in the military for over 23 years, with GNC for over 30. I love pre-workouts, but they all tasted like ass to me. So we came out my own pre-workout coffee. It's called Vertical Momentum Coffee. If you love coffee, it's twice the amount of caffeine, twice the energy, no crash. But the best thing is all the proceeds go to help Project Die Hard, which is a company we're actually setting up where 12 veterans and 2 veterans with families can come get treated for a whole year, them and their families, to get the physical health, mental health, get healthy for a whole year, not going to cost them a penny. And that's why, so if you buy any of the coffee, any of the t-shirts, any of the hats, 100% of the proceeds go to help Project Die Hard. So if you love coffee with a mission, write coffee down below and I'll get that information to you. Because if everybody drinks coffee, so you might as well do something to help somebody else. So Matthew, let me, now you're at 14 years. You're no longer a member of the military. And we've talked many times, especially when we were doing the, we had our little chats that we would do. And we know that once you step off base, military does not give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing. You no longer have a mission. You no longer have the camaraderie. And a lot of us get lost. And a lot of us, sometimes just end up with that bottle of whiskey and the pistol in our hand. So what was, after your 14 years in the military, what was your transitioning like?
Yeah. So going back to what I told you, I didn't realize that I was dealing with the struggles that I was dealing with. When I ended up getting out, it was a shock. I didn't want to, but there was also a part of me at the time, from being in combat, flying the mission I did, there's a lot more that goes into the story. But when that doctor said you're getting out, it was like I almost dropped my pack. It was like, whew, thank you. I don't have to be on the flight schedule anymore. I don't have to go out and I was getting ready to leave for Iraq, so there was part of me in my mind that was like, well, that's not a bad thing. I don't have to fly anymore, and I couldn't understand why I lost the passion for flying. So I ended up getting out, right? And I went back to flying for one reason, is that the V-22 contract that I was on ended. I needed a job. Well, what was I good at? Is wiggling the sticks, right? Well, at the time I was speaking about decision making. I was doing a lot of speaking all over the place. And this lady called me and she said, hey, can you speak? We got a group of veterans and we got a group of, veterans and first responders. And I was like, sure, I'll talk about decision making on it. And she goes, yeah, but I got another topic I want you to talk about. She goes, I want you to tell your story. And I was like, okay. She goes, I want you to talk about PTSD. And I'm like, why do you want me to talk about PTSD? I don't have problems. I ain't got any problems. I don't have any issues going on. And so, but I'm a speaker. So you don't turn down a speaking event. And I started researching it and I started looking into it. And I could not believe that I was reading a book about myself when I was reading and researching PTSD, all the stress and all the things that I had been going through. At the time when I got out in January 1st, 2007. I mean, it was crap. Nobody did anything for you. Hey, we're going to teach you how to write a resume. Good luck. See ya. And a whole different podcast is how I went through the med board process and all that. It was horrible. They just tried to stick it to me, but I was, I knew enough at the time to fight it, and so I ended up getting retired over the fight. I'm retired, at 60% from the Marine Corps, not just from I'm 100% total and permanent from the VA, but I'm 60% from the Marine Corps. So there's a whole story in that. So back to your question is that when you get out, the resources are not good. They're not there. And so what I have found over the time from that speaking, from going out and working with veterans and just speaking in these groups is that a lot of times they are in counseling, the VA, they'll put them in counseling and they're seeing somebody who's never walked the walk or talked the talk, who's never worn the uniform, who cannot relate, who's never lost a friend in combat, who's never lost a friend to suicide, who's, again, if you're a military veteran, and I were to ask you the question, have you ever lost a friend to suicide? I don't think I sit in a room when I'm speaking and working with groups that somebody doesn't raise their hand, that somebody has not lost a friend to suicide. And so I find it extremely important. I went back and got my degree in counseling, is that we build a resources of peer-to-peer mentorship. We build a community, we build a family, because we do not want people to think that they're walking alone in their struggles, because they're not. We all are.
And like I said, I just had, Lieutenant Colonel Slade on last week, and we were talking about the same exact thing. We're talking about, you know, me and you, we could be walking through Walmart and we look normal, but people don't know the war that's going on, you know, within us. And I think it's become like the silent war. But
Yeah.
also, you know, like we also talked with Brian was, you know, there's post traumatic stress and then there's post traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's two totally different things. So, but, you know, I didn't realize I had it until, like you said, until you start reading, you start studying, and then you start mirroring and be like, I do that. You
Yeah.
know, I do that.
Yeah.
Or I fly off the handle. I do that. And for me, it didn't hit home until me and my wife went to go see the movie, The Chris Kyle Story. And watching what he was going through, my wife looked at me and she's like, now I get it.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
you know, you don't really see it in yourself. You'll see it in others, but you don't see it in yourself. So now, once you started seeing it in yourself, you know, how did you go about, you know, dealing with post traumatic?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? A lot of it was the understanding, a lot of it was really kind of figuring out what it was going on. But I have found over my time, we all have these anniversary days. And I say anniversary days because it's not just one day uh, for me, but like July 9th every year is traumatic. July 9th. And it's not just for me, it's for my whole squadron. It's a most amazing thing that Clark Beatty made such a profound impact on a whole squadron that it starts in the morning on July 9th and goes all day. For the longest time, that day was brutal on me. I mean, it was brutal. Like it was from start to finish, it was brutal. I've gotten better over time. And this is just an example to answer your question of how I've gotten better. And it's through peer to peer. That's what it is. It's through me knowing and talking to my friends all day, knowing that we're all one, looking at the life that he brought to us and cherishing it. But it's also knowing that they're hurting too. It's also, knowing that if I need to pick up the phone and call one of them, I can. Is if I need to send a longer message that day, I can because they're feeling it. And so that peer to peer. So then you go from that, and then all these speaking events that I was doing, and I was at the time I'd really started going into a lot of, veteran speaking events, and it would turn into a lot of group sessions, and I was seeing that my story impacted them, that by me talking, it impacted them. I was at one, for example, Richard, I was at one with a group of first responders, some Marine or some veterans mixed in. And this guy, they had a chaplain for this county in North Carolina. And this chaplain was retired Army. But during Desert Storm, he was a gunny of a unit that launched the first barrage of artillery down on I can't remember, the first division or whoever it was of the Iraqis. I mean, they just obliterated them, with all the air and the artillery. They killed a lot of people. So for the longest time, he was the support as a chaplain. He became a chaplain, but during that time as a gunny, he was also the support network for all the young soldiers who had pulled, launched the rounds down range. And we're talking about now, this was 2016 timeframe, I think. So think about how far along Desert Storm. And this soldier broke down at the end in the back of the class. And he goes, your story and everything that you just talked to, he said, you were talking about me that whole time. He said, it's me. And I've never, one time, he said, I've always been the one that people have reached out to. I have never reached out to anybody. And I have never admitted that I have PTSD until today. And that's what it is. If you can tell your story, you can get vulnerable with your story. We can connect with each other through our stories, through what we've gone on, then we can feel that bond and make that relationship to where we're there to support each other. And that's the key to connecting. And that's where there is a disconnect right now for a lot of veterans who are seeing, and there's nothing wrong, with so civilian counselors and all that. There's just a part for, veterans as well.
All right. So then, something that me and you talked about offline and we've talked about many times during during those fireside chats that we used to have. You know, like Brian was talking about, he said, you know, I was part of, you know, shooting trucks,
Mm.
vehicles, houses. He's like, I know I've killed people. I know I've killed children. He
Sure.
said, so, you know, we're talking about stuff that you take with us that we don't talk about because it's not sexy. And
Yeah.
it's something that, you know, we deal with this. And it's usually after we separate, you know, even like, you know, police officers, firefighters, you know,
Absolutely.
even like veterans, you know, we do things and see things that no person should ever do or see. And we really can't really talk to anybody except the people that we were with at the time. And when
Yep.
we get out, we can't talk to our wives, we can't talk to our kids.
Yep.
So it festers. And like you said, you know, talk to us about moral injury, because
Yeah.
this is something you barely ever hear anybody talk about. But I think this is one of the root causes of suicide.
Absolutely. And, you know, when I first got out and I was just focused PTSD, because that's all I knew, to be honest with you. And I was lucky enough to go with an organization called Heroes to Heroes. If anybody's ever heard of that, take a look at it. Wonderful organization, Heroes to Heroes. And they take veterans on a trip to Israel. And so I was lucky enough to go to Israel. We spent 10 days there. Well, the focus is to talk about PTSD and this topic called moral injury, which I was not really familiar with at the time. But you have a lot of group sessions and you talk a lot about just what you bring up is that we've all seen, we've all done, we've all been a part of things that maybe we're not proud of. We've been a part of losing our friends. And so you get that survivor's remorse, let's say, when you lose it. Like if you go back to Clark Beatty, is like, well, why was it not my helicopter and why was it their helicopter that crashed? You know, why did, you know, I not die and he die? Why couldn't I have switched places? So we get that, you know, that survivor's remorse. You see this a lot with, you know, infantry guys and people who've been in the, you know, the heart of the battle, where maybe they're there and they're get hit by an ID or their friend, you know, right next to him dies. And they're like, you know, why not me? Why him? You know, so they hurt. As well as what do? I killed people. I shot people who, you know, those different things. So PTSD is very important, but we have to address more than just the PTSD. We have to address this moral injuries, the survivor's remorse, the guilt of taking people's lives. And so I think that's one of the most key things that we can do. And what I end up seeing a lot as a counselor is that a lot of veterans just focus on PTSD. So they're focusing on the traumatic event, but there's so much more than just dealing with that traumatic event. Yes. Do we have to talk about it? Do we have to work through it? Do we have to deal with it? 110%. But what about the other things, the survivor's remorse, the guilt of you being alive and maybe your friend not being alive anymore, the guilt of maybe you took others' lives? That has to be addressed. That's not PTSD necessarily. That's an internal battle, moral battle going on inside of you, and that needs to be addressed and talked about.
All right. So now, because I know that for me, it took a lot of inner work. It
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of journaling. It took a lot of, I've been seeing the same therapist, I think, since 2012. So it, it took a lot of internal work, I, self, and me, all the isms, you know.
Yeah.
So now talk to us about how you had to reinvent and reimagine your life. What are some of the steps that you took to start recovering from these things?
Well, one, I cherish the time with Clark Beatty, and I look back at the friendship that he and I had, and I really feel that if Clark could talk to me today and be a part of life today, he would be proud of the things that not only me, but the things that other people that the things that we're doing. You know, for me, I literally sat out there, Richard, on, July 10th or July 11th. And I prayed and I said, I will not let this happen again. And it became my mission. So I found a purpose through the loss of Clark, is what I'm getting at. And that has been my purpose for convening communities. That has been my purpose for my speaking, is to, one, avoid human error and to avoid, people making the same mistakes over and over and over. But you have to find a purpose. You have to find that reason. And for me, that's what it is. It's this platform. It's this platform, but it's bigger than just what I can do. It's can I bring resources together for other veterans? There's so many good things out there that people are doing. Can we bring these resources together for the good of others? And that's my mission. I live mission driven each and every day to make a difference in people's lives. The other thing I know is that we all think that we're walking alone, especially veterans. A lot of times we think that we're walking through life and we're the only ones dealing with this pain and hurt and struggle, and we're not. And can we bring people together, share their stories, and give, like sharing your story? Give people understand. That's what you do, is you share your story, and you let people know that they're not alone, and that you've gone from a struggling spot to doing amazing things with your podcast and all the stuff that you're doing. So can we take these negative things in our lives and find a purpose? Find a purpose for our story, to let people know that, yeah, I made it. I was here, but now I'm up here.
All right. So now I didn't think I was going to ask you this question. I don't know why I even thought about it. But there's been some, helicopter crashes that, even with NASCAR, they had a couple of NASCAR drivers got killed in helicopters. But for me, because I'm a sports guy, I've been an LA Lakers fan since I've been a little boy. And when we lost Kobe, and for me, after everything I read and all the studying that I did, if that, the pilot would have just said, guys, we're not flying today.
Yeah.
The weather's looking horrible. It's not going to get any better. Our visibility is shit. And unfortunately, the force that was Kobe, his personality, I think that's where they got into a little bit of a problem. Instead of, he wanted to make Kobe happy, and instead of now everybody's gone. That's my opinion. I mean, I studied on it a lot, but I would think if he would have just made that decision, he would still be alive. So talk about making critical decisions, because like you said, you did 659 life flights.
Yeah.
You've seen many decisions that were split made, where either they lost or they saved a life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. So, on mishaps, a lot of times it's, we always see this, it's pilot error. It's rarely ever the machine that causes the issue, the catastrophic failure of the equipment. In the case of Kobe Bryant, it was completely, we all know, we've all seen it, read it. It was completely pilot error. That's what I teach. That's what I speak about. That's what at conferences I go and talk about decision making, how we make decisions as humans. And the bottom line, it is we learn through experience. That's it. There's no other, it's not rocket science. Is that the more experience we have in some general area, the better we are at making those decisions. Well, how do we learn in a lot of cases? We should learn, and we need to learn through mishaps like the Kobe Bryant mishap, to where if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to make a decision, am I going to go or no go, that I'm looking outside and I know the weather's crap and I know what the weather's like out there. And I'll get back to the weather in his case. I know what the weather's like out there, and I know that is my responsibility as the pilot in command to not put myself or my passengers in a bad situation. And this pilot's situation, it was Kobe and friends and family. In my situation, a lot of times as an air medical or in the Marine Corps, it was my flight crew. In air medical world, it's the flight nurse, flight paramedic. And what I do now, it's Roger Penske or other NASCAR or Indy drivers, or their families. So it's up to me to make those hard decisions. So if you have somebody, like Kobe Bryant or like Roger Penske, and they think, we need to go, no, it's they have to respect me and my decision making. So in the case of Kobe, He made all the mistakes in the world. He had probably, because everybody knows, if you've ever been on the West Coast, they get that marine layer, that low layer of clouds. He'd probably flown below that layer of clouds many, 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 many times. You know, on this day, he punched in. And if you know anything about it, he ended up getting spatial D and vertigo, and he was almost breaking out of the top. And unfortunately, he turned and came back down. So if he'd have gone 100 feet up more, he'd have been on top of the clouds, you know, but he didn't. He got spatial disorientation and vertigo, and he came out through the bottom of the clouds, pointing down. He didn't mean for that to happen. That's not what he intended to do. The other thing is you got to trust your equipment. That was a fully IFR capable helicopter, you know, with an autopilot on it. You know, you get in that situation, hit some buttons and let the aircraft fly itself. So the decision-making process, again, it goes back to what you said at the beginning, Rich. You want to break the chain of events. The chain of events started back in the FBO when they were making the decision to go. Having that, you know, that decision-making power, that intestinal fortitude, so to speak, to say, no, we can't go in this weather because I can't put you and your family in a bad situation. And that didn't happen that day. Again, he did not intend for that to happen. You know, nobody sets out and says, hey, let's go get in here in a good helicopter and, you know, crash it. But it ended up happening. So you got to think, you got to go through that decision-making process, and you got to set your limits and your boundaries, and you can't be afraid to say, we can't do it. And that becomes hard sometimes.
Now, like I had Brian on last week, and he said, it was something I've never heard before. He says he did chair flying.
Absolutely.
And I never heard of that before, but I would think about all the times, because I was a tank commander, that even if we weren't in the tank, you know, we would sit in the tank, and we would just go over stuff and go over stuff and go over stuff. And he talked about how a lot of the PTSD probably could be eliminated if they had post-traumatic stress, and if they talked about some of the stuff that's going to happen, because we know it's going to happen before the boots even hit the ground. So have you heard about this? Have you talked about
convene communities? Richard is chair flying. Convene communities, putting people in different situations. It's a scenario-based training situational platform. It's putting people out there and letting them think through different situations, different things before they get there, you know. And it's like me sitting, let's say we were going to talk about parenting, right? And I said, hey, Richard, have you ever been in this situation with your kids? And you're like, oh yeah, let me tell you about this time that I did this. Don't do this. That's chair flying. That's going through the process. So let me give you a quick story. So I told you I played baseball at UNC Greensboro, and we had this coach. His name was Mike Gasky, and we all thought he was off his rocker, Richard. We thought he's crazy. And he was a Muay Thai kickboxer at one time. And there's a picture of him in a book where he's in a Thai ring and he's on his knees and his hands are up in the air. And he looks like Jesus, long hair, beard, looks like what you would see as the typical picture of Jesus. But he was the first American to win in a Thai ring. So here we are. I go play baseball with this guy. And at the time when I met him, I was like, I'm not sure about this guy, Dad. He's kind of weird, you know. And I was on my recruiting trip because he hopped out. He had all this energy. Well, when we would stretch for 30 minutes. And it was like we are the Karate Kid. We're over there waxing on and waxing off. We're doing but we never had injuries. But the last thing we did in every time we stretched is the last 5 minutes, he would have us lay on our back, palms up, eyes closed, feet splayed, and he would talk us through a scenario. He would talk us through a situation, and he would tell us to visualize what position we played and what we would do in this situation. And he would give us different situations: ball getting hit out to right field, runners on first and third. You know, what are you doing? What are you saying? So we're visualizing, we're chair flying, right? I thought it was the craziest thing ever. So now you fast forward. I go to flight school and they tell us, go sit in these cockpit trainers and go through the motions, act like you're flying, you know, tape a runway on the floor, walk around it, and think about it, everything that you're doing when you're walking around in the landing pattern. That's chair flying. So true story. I'm in Afghanistan. I'm leading a mission, and it's a early launch, like around 4 a.m. launch. We're going to uh, go up into the mountains and take out a place called Tarin Kowt. It's supposedly where Osama bin Laden and the Taliban met prior to 9/11, and we're doing a hard hit raid onto this mountain, right? So one, we're doing it with the Australian Special Forces. One, they have this thing that we can fly, that like it's flying the mission before we go. It's called top scene at the time. So I literally had, I was in the back of the Huey as the air mission commander. I remember flying up the mountain valley, and it was like I had done it 20 times. It was the same look, same feel, everything that I was seeing. I'd already flown this thing like 20 times. And so we go up and we execute the raid, and we come back down. But here's the point I'm making to you. So before I led the mission, I had what's called a storyboard in my hand. So it had all my mission information. And I'm laying in the corner. It's like about 2 a.m. We're getting ready. And I'm laying in the corner, and I'm laid back. So I'm in the chair. I'm laid back. I have the storyboard in my hands. My eyes are closed. And somebody comes up and kicks me, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing?" And you know what I was doing? I was chair flying the mission. What dawned on me right when that person kicked me, I said, I'm doing what Coach Gasky taught me to do. I'm flying this mission and going through everything in this mission before I actually do the mission, because if things go wrong, that can't be the first time that I think about it. So I was flying it. I did it. I was chair flying. I was doing exactly what Coach Gasky taught me. And it came to me like at that moment, like he wasn't crazy. He actually had a lot of knowledge. And so that's what that gentleman was talking about, is chair flying. You got to go through it, but it's all aspects of life going through it. So yeah, I love it. I love chair flying. That's what my whole platform is built off of, putting people there before they go through it.
So, okay, let's, for the last 10 minutes or so, a lot of people that watch the show are veterans.
Mm-hmm.
I call them veteranpreneurs. They're
Yep.
veteranpreneurs. And a lot of us, if you spend more than 5 minutes in the military, you know that what an SOP is.
Yep.
Seems like a lot of people, once they get out of the military, they start a company, they forget what an SOP is, and they don't even draw up an SOP or a business plan until they're $10,000 in debt. But you've flown Mr. Penske. I call him Mr. Penske because I've met him, I think, once or twice. Probably one of the nicest people you will ever meet, but one of the smartest people you will ever meet. And I'm a big NASCAR guy. I love NASCAR. I stopped last night before I went to bed. I was playing my NASCAR Heat game. I love NASCAR. I drive number 18. So
come on. 22 or 12. That's what you got to drive.
And I'm a junior guy. I love junior and I love senior. But one thing I love about Mr. Penske is, like I said, he's smart, but he's also a humanitarian.
Yep.
So now I'm sure you've seen all types of business owners. You flew all types of high profile athletes, owners. What are some of the top things that you see that make them successful and keep them successful?
Yeah. So specifically Roger Penske, like work ethic, one. That I've never seen a man that works as hard as Roger Penske. And he just works. And that's one of the things that's amazing. Another thing that's truly amazing about him is he doesn't forget a name. If he meets you and you have a meaningful conversation and you spend a little bit of time with him, it could be 2 years later, he will remember your name. And I find that phenomenal, because we watch this happen, and people talk about it all the time. So work ethic, knowing who you're talking to, what they bring to the table. And then that's the other thing, is surrounding yourself with good people and working with good people. Those are like some of the key attributes of what I've seen of the successful people that I've been around that are key. Mr. Hendrick, I've flown him a couple of times, been around him. Same way, Joe Gibbs, same way. So in NASCAR, and these people are just great people, and they care about people first and foremost. They truly care, but their work ethic is like nothing you've ever seen. And they also know it just doesn't fall into your lap. If you want anything, you got to work at it. These people have been at it for a while, and that's what makes them successful.
Okay, now one thing I love about NASCAR is they're not afraid to talk about God.
Yes.
They love America. I feel bad for you if you sat during the national anthem at a NASCAR race. That would not be a good
place. Yeah.
They love America. So, but I think a lot of people that I've met on the show that are uber successful is they have a strong faith.
Absolutely.
So, being a pilot through all the stuff you went through, I'm sure there's been a lot of narrow mishaps where you might not have made it. You might have, how has your faith gotten you through the struggles in your life?
Everything. So I said earlier, I'm a Christian counselor, and I'm a true believer, and my faith in God is unwavering. It truly is. And I've had instances in my aviation career where I know God had a hand in it. There's no doubt. Two things where I can put my finger on and be like, if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. I was saved. So faith is everything. I think right now in this country, we've lost our way when it comes to faith. It's something that, we're under attack where, people are coming at us. If we come out and we talk about our faith in God, and our faith in God is what's going to allow us to succeed. And I think that you're seeing people, I think you're going to see a movement. I think you're going to see somewhat of a crusade of people standing up and coming back, coming together arm in arm and going, we have to get our faith back in this country. We have to get our faith back in our youth. And it's on us as leaders. It's on us as parents. It's on us as teachers and whoever that we really kind of right this ship. But again, faith drives me each and every day in what I do, and how I believe that my mission is to help others, because that's what God wants me to do. That's what I'm here for. That's what we're all here for. That's what you're doing, Richard, is you're helping others through your platform. And that's what the Convene platform is. Can we bring people together, and can we lift each other up through our stories? Can I help people be successful on an entrepreneurial platform? I'm just a resource. I'm just a resource, but I'm a resource that can help people and bring others together. And that's what this is all about.
All right. So then you've mentioned it a couple of times. I'm part of the Convene community. Talk about the Convene community, what it is, why you started it, and how it works.
Yeah. So Convene is, it's a resource first and foremost. It is a platform that allows people to come in. It's a learning management system. We've built in a project management, a CRM, and a document management. The reason why we did that is because everybody got tired of going to different places, right? Everybody got tired of, going to Dropbox and doing all that. So we built this all-in-one resource, but that's not the important thing about it. The important thing about it is it allows people to come in and collaborate around their story. So everybody, like yourself, is purpose driven. We're all purpose driven. If you're an entrepreneur, if you have a nonprofit, if you have a small business, you're purpose driven. And so can we take our purpose driven place, and can we create an environment where people can come in and collaborate? So it's not meant to be social media. It's not meant to be any of that, but it's a place where people can come in and communicate and collaborate in a more, we'll say, intimate setting, right? Meaning inside of the group, inside of your community. There's blogs in there. There's discussion boards in there. You can put content in there via modules. We don't call them training. We call them experience. Now, there's one key differentiator that Convene brings to the table, and that's anonymity. Now, why is anonymity important to me and you? Anonymity is important to me and you because if we can create an environment where that veteran who feels like they can't come out and share their dirt yet, they can come into Convene and they can post a discussion board or respond to a discussion board as themselves or anonymously. And that will always be protected and Convene. And you see that we have a youth community, we have a parent community, we have a military and veteran community. And you see people coming in and they might be struggling. They don't want to come out and say, hey, I'm Matthew Currin and I have PTSD and I'm struggling, but they might come in there and do that anonymously. And then what they'll see as we grow this thing out, they'll see an army of peer-to-peer counseling. I don't, just because I have a degree in counseling doesn't mean that all my other veteran friends can't come in and be a peer-to-peer counselor. It's like coming in, and if somebody writes that they're struggling and this is what they're going through, maybe about 10, 15, 20 of us all come in and tell, put the big blog discussion board hug on them and say, I've been there, brother. I've been through what you're going through. This is how I got through it, and so we can help each other out. So the platform is a collaborative platform. Allows anybody and everybody to come in and create content, grow a business. We are in the military and veteran community, we're building a free entrepreneurial class to teach people veterans how to use the platform if they're looking for a space. It's more than just creating a 10-step course on how to do A, B, and C. There's got to be collaboration in there.
Yep. And I meant to mention it earlier, but I want to thank Tom Dorney. He's the one that actually hooked us up. So I always give my love out to Tom. I wanted to say it earlier, Tom, but I forgot. But I still give love.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Lisa Herring, her.
Without her, I wouldn't have my disability. So,
absolutely.
So
yeah, and Lisa Herring, one thing. Here's this 66-year-old lady who's married to a Marine who has a son that's a veteran and teaches people to file for their Social Security and disability benefits. Lisa makes the most money of anybody on the Convene platform. It's phenomenal. And what is she doing? She's helping people one person at a time, and to me, her testimonials are phenomenal when they come in. They're life-changing because she is just such an incredible person.
All right. So now how do we find the Convene community, and how do we find you and support your mission and what you got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So convenecommunities.com is the main website, is one place. You can go and become a member straight in convenecommunities.com. That'll take you right in to the platform. That community basically is a community that teaches you how to use the platform. That's all that community is about. And for veterans that are out there listening, you can join military.convenecommunities.com. And in that one, we're just starting to grow that one. We're getting ready to start having just veteran entrepreneur calls or veteran calls where we're bringing resources around. So if you're a nonprofit, let me mention this is very important. I'm what's called a public benefit corporation. I have a mission. And so my mission that is all nonprofits will always use the Convene platform for free. And why is that? The goal is that we take this community. Everybody's already doing wonderful things, but can we give them a landing place where they can find you? It's amazing to me how I talked to a gentleman the other day who has his wonderful organization in Houston. And I was telling him about Operation New Uniform in Florida. And he was like, I wouldn't know anything about them. So we need to create this resource. Doesn't mean you do anything different, but we create this resource in one spot. So yeah, I'm looking for entrepreneurs. I'm looking for veterans who want to grow something, and I'll teach you how to use the platform for free. Let's grow a resource for our veteran brothers and sisters together.
I love it. So guys, make sure that you check out Matthew. He's amazing on social media. He's great on Facebook. You send him a message, boom, right back. He's no joke. Become part of the Convene community. My old podcast was on there. We're going to start moving over, bringing our new podcast over there. So we'll be able to help other people there. And guys, make sure, like I said, if you love coffee, make sure you pick up some coffee. It's saving people's lives. But also, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy. And I believe that we either choose to be a victim or we can choose to be a victor. And for me, the three most important words in the English language are, today I decide. So guys, if you're watching this, you guys make the decision whether you want to be a victim or the victor. Matthew, brother, I just want to say thank you. I'm so blessed to be able to call you friend all these years. I hope we can start getting that. I forget what we call it. It was like
smoking. We are calling it smoking and joking.
I think to get back to smoking and joking. I think people are hurting more than ever, and I think that's what's needed, where people can just come and relax, have some fun, and just hang out with brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it's like sitting around the campfire,
Yeah,
smoking and joking. What we do as veterans.
yeah. All right, guys. So make sure you check out Convene Communities. Matthew, I appreciate you so much, brother. I know this is going to be your best year ever.
Yeah.
So
It's going to be my best year for being with people like you, Richard. That's why. So
well, I appreciate you, brother, and thank you so much. And guys, as you know, my tagline is, um, today I decide are the three most important words in the English language. So, make sure you make the right decision today. And also, guys, vertical momentum. The only way to go is but up. I will catch you guys tomorrow. Matt, have an amazing day, brother.
thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on.
God bless you.
God bless you too.